Welcome to the Nancy Perspective, where every story is a reminder that life's hardest battles often belong to the kindest hearts. Well, it's been a while since I've sat in this studio. Our last set of podcasts started or flowed from Newfoundland. So sitting here after so long feels kind of different and yet a huge opportunity, because the woman I'm sitting across from, we only agreed to this yesterday.
Yes. Less than 24 hours
Less
ago.
than 24 hours ago. It came out of the blue for you.
Yes.
Yeah. And for me, myself, I've been watching Karen Dean on Facebook. Everyone laughs at me because everyone I pick up is from Facebook. And yet I will say that I've been watching you on Facebook. Empower truth and authenticity, and empower people with words that I often don't have the ability to say out loud, but you have this magical way with them that gives people a choice to feel and flow differently. So I want to welcome my guest, Karen, to the incredible stage that is the Nancy Perspective.
Thank you.
But I want to know why you said yes, and I want you to tell my audience who you are and why we sit together today.
I said yes because, first of all, I don't often say no to a podcast interview. But secondly, how you introduced it, you were like, we are meant to connect. It is 2:22 and I am really into finding meaning in things and in numbers and angel numbers. And I thought, okay, we need to do this.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in one of my favorite places on my deck, and it just felt right, and something you don't know yet.
Okay. Well, it's funny that you say that you were sitting on your deck, because I was also sitting on my deck. And part of the reason I said I'm going to do it is because your view looked like my view. So it was an interesting moment for me, but I'm excited about this.
An eagle flew over as you texted me, and that was my spirit animal, I say, and they always show up to give me a message.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, okay,
I'm going to drive an hour to meet her.
I can do this. I don't have any plans for tomorrow. So yeah, that's why I said yes. And who I am, I call myself a self-made resilience expert.
Okay.
I have been through a lot of pretty much everything you can imagine that can go bad in your life. I have been through.
Nice to meet you. I am one of the same.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I think we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's my job now to help others through hard things.
Wow.
I wasn't given all this shit just to sit back and do nothing with it.
Yeah.
So I'm on a mission now I'm like a motivational speaker and a coach, and I go into organizations and help their employees with their mental health and build resilience and realize that life can be really hard and really amazing all at the same time. And so that's what I'm really passionate about now. And I'm writing another book. I already have one book out, but I'm doing another one to share more of my story and hopefully inspire even more people.
I love when we take moments of hard, and I will say it this way with you, a lot of moments of hard, and never stop growing, shifting, and changing.
And I think that's how we all should look at the hard. We just don't.
Well, I don't know that sometimes we know how to.
Right.
And that's the question that I want to ask you. How did you find the resilience, and how have you continued to find the resilience? Because one of the things you and I started our conversation before we came on the podcast was about the fact that it seems like it's a never-ending opportunity to find it. We realize there's a balance, and yet right now there's a challenge. So how have you continued to find that resilience and rise?
It's a bit of a story behind how I started
stories.
How I started to find my resilience, but I was in an abusive marriage.
Yeah.
And my second child was a save the marriage baby. Those never work. And when he was 7.5 weeks old, he was super sick, like a rag doll, that one morning. wouldn't cry, wouldn't eat, like nothing,
Yeah.
just floppy little baby. So I got in my truck and I headed to the IWK. My husband would come with me because he was busy. And I picked up the girl who babysat for us at the time, and she came with me. And they rushed us into
Wow.
the room in the back, and not just, the bed with the curtains around it, but like an actual room with walls and a door. And I thought, shit, this is bad.
Not good.
So we went through so many tests that day, spinal taps. They tried to put an IV in the poor little dehydrated little guy. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And we spent 4 days at the IWK Children's Hospital. I found out that, well, the soft spot on the top of his head was bulging, and um, they thought there might be some brain issues. And he had a hole in his heart. He had been septic. They told me that if I had waited another hour to take him to the hospital, he probably would have died. And on the 4th day there, a team of neurologists, 5 neurologists walk in the room with me and my little baby by myself,
Wow.
and told me that he had been born with a permanent brain injury,
Wow.
and to prepare to have a completely dependent child who will probably never walk, probably never talk, and possibly be tube fed. And
Wow.
and then they said, "Now you can go home." And my husband, of course, wasn't there, so I had to wait for him to come pick us up because he had come and taken the vehicle home, so it wasn't in the parking garage all week. And I waited and waited, he showed up, and on the way home, he said, "That's bullshit, there's nothing wrong with this kid. I'm not coming to any stupid doctor's appointments."
Wow.
So I thought, "Okay, I need to figure this out." And when I got home, this is 2001, so the internet is not at all like it is
Yeah.
now, and I went online and searched and found a group chat of other parents whose children had, it's called periventricular leukomalacia.
Wow.
And there was just horror story after horror story of these kids and how difficult it was, and how challenging it was for the children because they lacked so many abilities that the rest of us have. And I kind of cried for 3 days, and then I just looked at him and I looked at my little 3-year-old daughter running around, and I said, "That's not gonna be my kid."
Hmm.
And I got
Just gonna give her.
just well, I got him every, like, help I could get from every medical professional, like physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, you name it. And if somebody mentioned a different kind of help, I was like, "Refer me."
Yeah. Let's
If
do
it
it.
didn't work, it didn't work. So I took him to almost 200 doctor's appoint or medical professional
Wow.
appointments in his first 5 years of life. And he walked on the school bus just like everybody else and has had no help through school. He's as normal as men get. Sorry to all the men. Um, and it was somewhere in those moments when he was trying to do all the things like walking and talking, and he was, delayed on every developmental
Yeah.
milestone. And he used to look at me and go, "Can't." And I would say, "Buddy, there's no such thing as I can't. There's
Yeah.
only I don't want to." And at some point I went, "Wait a minute. Why aren't you listening to yourself?"
Wow.
And what that
Wow.
else, that's
Wow.
he was my inspiration for doing all the things of just getting out of that abusive marriage. And every time I was going through something hard, I just thought, I have to be a good role model for these kids.
Yeah.
I had 3,
Yeah.
and I thought, I can't mess this up. I don't want my kids to go out in this world as messed up humans. I
Yeah.
want them to be good, kind humans who are independent and, contribute to the world. And they were my motivation to say, all right, how do I turn all of this bad stuff into something good?
Wow. So would you say where is his health now?
Well, another wow moment in at the end of June in 2020,
Yeah.
he went to the hospital for the first time by himself
Wow.
because he was 19 and I wasn't allowed to go with him. And he spent 12 hours in an emergency room
Yeah.
to be told that he had a very large mass in his chest that they believed to be cancer.
Wow. The word is resilient.
Yeah. So, his older sister, my daughter, worked at the hospital at the time, and she kinda hung out and stayed with him until he could come home after she got off her shift. And she drove home with him, and while he had been waiting, he made a playlist of songs like Survivor
Yeah.
and, things like that. And when he got home, I saw the headlights pull in the driveway, and I took a deep breath, and I was like, "How you feeling?" And he missed his calling as a comedian because he went, "Cancerous?" I was like, "You little shit."
Wow.
And every day he said, "Get this shit out of me so I can go back to work."
Wow.
And he worked on a dairy farm at the time. And he had 6 rounds of chemotherapy. The only illness he had from that was he vomited 3 times. He was tired, he lost his hair, but his only real sickness was vomiting 3 times. And then he did 25 rounds of radiation, which should burn you to a crisp.
Yeah.
He had 0 side effects. 0. His skin didn't even get red. And he went back to work halfway through radiation. So he will never take credit for any of this. He doesn't like any attention at all, but he's so incredible and he has been through so much and has been such an inspiration to me. And I hope to other people to say that, you know what, you can. Mindset means
Fine.
everything.
Yeah.
And if you say you can,
Then you
you
can.
can.
Yeah.
If you say you can't, you won't.
Yeah.
And he's taught me so much. All of my children have. But
Yeah. That is, I first of all, thank you for saying that story out loud. As I said to you, I don't know who you are. My goal and gift when I bring people on is to just figure it out as we go. And that story shows me who he has been mentored by because it does start with us.
yeah,
And yet the lessons that happen when we open to learning with our children.
yeah, they can teach us so
They
much.
they are you and I talked about this before the podcast started. For me, the reason I am where I am and
Mhm.
don't give up. And it sounds to me
Yeah,
like it's been the same gift for you
for
as you've
sure.
flown through.
Yeah. I've worked in the school system and you see so many children who have gone through hard
I
things
know.
like parents divorce or whatever, and they use that as an excuse to make really bad choices.
I know.
And it makes me very sad. And
Me
I thought,
too.
I do not want my kids to have that mindset that, oh, mom and dad got divorced, so I'm gonna go get hammered and,
Yeah.
drive drunk tonight and possibly kill somebody, or I'm going to go steal stuff or whatever
Yeah.
because mom and dad are fighting. I thought, no, we don't do that.
I think it's funny that we're talking about this because I said this to a friend yesterday. I get really emotional when it comes to children because if there's we go to university for education to become something, but we're never taught how to be a parent.
Yes.
And we watch our children walk around and flow through these hards because the adults in their lives were not necessarily acting like adults.
Yeah.
And that's where we lose them.
And we don't teach them how to deal with hard things.
Well, I don't, do you know epigenetics?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it's when you talk about your son, I feel like that's how I healed and that's how I've gone through my own version. And I feel like his mind and the shifts in his brain has helped him go through the same. But for the first 8 years, those kids are mirrored by what we are
Yeah.
internally. Everything that we feel quietly is what they think, act, and feel.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, and these kids are running around doing this, and we have a lot of angry adults in the world,
Mhm.
it's a very scary place for our
Yeah.
children to be. And yet, look at what you can do
Yeah.
from a place of your own heart and rise anyway.
And it's about just having that one safe person in their lives
It
that
is.
keeps it real and says, "Yeah, everybody's doing that, but that doesn't mean you do it." And have that real
Yeah.
conversation
Real.
of, "This is why you don't do that." And I mean, that's how I was with all of my kids. If they came home and said, "Oh, so and so did this at school," we would have a conversation
Us
about
too.
it
Yep.
and say, "This is why you don't do that."
Yeah.
And, brainstorm it out together, not just me preaching at them.
Well, I think that's the other thing, right? We were taught, I grew up, wrong or right, it is what it is, with parents who told me what I needed to do.
Yeah.
My family is a mix where we sit and have very open, transparent, trustful conversations where they can actually call me out.
Yeah, I've been called out before.
And it's not so much fun
No, it isn't.
when they're sitting there telling me that I'm angry and that's the reason maybe they're off today,
Yeah.
right? Or the way I'm speaking to them doesn't necessarily work for them.
Well,
And
yeah,
I'm like, okay.
I understand that. And a couple of things, last or 2 weeks ago, I got invited to a school to speak to grade 9s
Yeah.
about resilience. So I did a keynote at the beginning, and then the week before, the students had gotten to choose which workshops they wanted to go through for the rest of the day. Hats off to Island View High
Yeah.
because they host this wellness day for the grade 9s, and
Wow, that's magical.
I wish every school did something
Yeah.
like that. What was fascinating to me, though, is that most of the people, the students who signed up for my workshop, which was labeled as resilience, empathy, and gratitude, were male identifying.
Wow.
And I thought, okay,
Wow.
this has potential because the guys I grew up with were not allowed to have feelings. They
No.
topped it out, be a man. We
Yeah.
don't cry. We don't show emotion.
Yeah.
And so I made sure I told them, every room full of them, because we did like some worksheets that
Yeah.
put together a toolkit for when you need a reminder of the strength you have inside of you. And I said, if there is anyone in your household or in your friend group that is going to make fun of anything you wrote on those pieces of paper, do not show them.
Yeah, they're not your
Tuck
people.
them away.
Yeah.
If your dad or your uncle or your big brother or someone is going to put you down
Yeah.
because you're trying to look after your own mental health, do not show them these
Wow.
documents
Yeah, very true.
because it's not safe
No,
always for
it isn't.
kids to be open until maybe they are adults and they're out on their own and they're not dependent on that grown up in their household.
Well, that's it. And I think that's the hardest thing. We talk about these grown-ups in our households, and I have it in my book, and I've talked about it many times with my kids. Just because an adult has an adult suit on
Yeah,
doesn't mean they're an adult
right.
at all.
And I think we forget that we are raising adults. We are not raising children.
Yeah.
And the other example I wanted to use is my oldest daughter, who has been through a lot as well. 2 nasty divorces that she lived through with me, and as the oldest child, they usually get the brunt of
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
bad things.
Yeah, I get it.
And she had her lung spontaneously collapse when she was 14 and narrowly missed surgery. Hey, the hole in her lung healed 8 hours before she was scheduled to go into surgery. The following year, when she was 15, she lost all feeling on the right side of her body and about 75% of her strength on the left side of her body over a 2 to 3 week period. Lots of medical appointments trying to figure it out. We finally got an MRI, and they said, come for the MRI on Friday afternoon, and neurology will see you next week. So they brought her out of the MRI, and was in the room with her. And they said, neurology wants to see you right now.
Oh my goodness.
And we spent the weekend at the IWK with her getting IV
I
prednisone.
don't wanna say this, but it sounds like a favorite place of yours and not a
I am the tour guide
of the WK.
Anyway, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis
Oh my
at 15. But she's gone on, she's this incredible
Yeah.
young woman now. And the story about it is about the raising the adults and having the faith in what we instill in our children is when she started university, my first baby to leave the nest.
Yeah.
And she lived in residence, and I would call her every day. How was your day? What'd you do? Did you meet new people? How were your classes? All the mom questions. And one day, about 2 weeks in, she goes, Mom, fuck off. And I said, excuse me?
Okay.
And she said, you raised me to be able to look after myself. I know what I'm doing. And I know if I need you, you will be there and I will call you. But she said, I'm doing my thing. I'm out on my own. I can do this. I don't need you to check up on me every day. So I fucked off. And
It's the hardest thing in the world.
it was. But you know what? She's 27 now. She's been in a healthy relationship for 11 years. Both of my kids, the 2 oldest ones, bought houses at the age of 23, like
Wow.
since 2020. She's got a baby. She's got all the things. She's living the life. She is a manager for Nova Scotia Health for the entire northern zone.
Wow.
Um,
Both of your kids. So is your son that C word free?
Yeah,
Can I
he's
have
in
that?
remission.
Okay.
He's in remission. He has a great job. He just bought his own house on his own in November. Moved out of my nest and is doing great. And those are the two oldest, and my third one is also she's just an awesome kid too.
I I I I feel like we're getting to the end of podcast 1, which has so many things to unravel because I have so many questions around the fact that your children have had these things. So I'm a big believer in not labeling anything.
Yeah.
Because the minute we define something, it becomes us. It feels like your journey has been about allowing it to be what it is and working through it differently.
Yeah. And my son is proof of that because if they
Yeah.
look at a CT scan of his brain today
Yeah.
at 24 years old, it still looks all messed up. And a radiologist will write the report and say that this person is in a wheelchair and tube fed because
But he's not.
the damage is permanent. It's always going to be
Oh.
there. But his brain has actually rewired
Yeah.
and it's using the parts that it has. And there's a whole bunch of things that aren't there that should be there. The corpus callosum, which joins your right brain to your left brain and sends the messages back and forth, is so thin they can't even see it in some of the images. But he still is
Fully
a
functional.
fully functioning adult who lives on his own, who, again, is as normal as men get. There's some things I'd like to change about him, but it's
Yeah. I'm almost speechless. And I love when I get to a place where I'm speechless because when you spend your life healing, and I'm sure you've gone through your journey of healing as well, from a place of what society has told us to the truth of what we know and how we've healed ourselves. All of the moments that we used to question, we don't anymore.
yeah. And when something hard happens, people ask me this all the time. They're like, "So when you found out your son had cancer, did you just go, 'Oh, here we go again?'" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Pretty much."
Pretty much.
I just said, "All right, let's do this." And I started, contacting doctors, and I was kind of his person because he did not want to take responsibility
Yeah.
for any of it
Yeah.
because 19-year-old boys are not adults,
Nope.
despite what the medical
Nope.
system
That's
thinks.
right. I agree.
And he was like, "Mom, you handle it." He didn't want to watch the video on how to prepare for chemo. He said, "Mom, you watch it and tell me what I need to know."
Wow.
He refused to be part of that. He didn't want that stress and that all the admin stuff I say. He's kind of his
Yeah.
admin person. And I think that's part of why he healed as well as he did because
Yeah.
he didn't have to handle
The hard.
all the hard.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he had a lot,
But it was a different kind of hard.
he didn't have to prepare meals. He could come home from the hospital and go down to his bedroom and rest.
Yeah.
He wasn't responsible for any other humans to keep them alive, which, many of us as adults, when we get cancer, we still have to cook the meals and buy the groceries and
Yeah.
figure out how these kids are going to get places. So I think that was a blessing for him and that he had someone that could support him as I did.
Yeah.
And that to me, I run my own business. I work for myself. I basically dropped my business for 2 years to look after him, which was a whole different hard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but and then his younger sister homeschooled herself through grade 7,
Wow.
home by herself at 12 years old while I'm sitting in a hospital parking lot because I'm not allowed to go in the hospital with him because of COVID restrictions.
Wow.
So
So yeah.
she, all of my kids have had very different but huge challenges
And yet they have a mother that sits, and when I hugged you, that has huge light and huge resilience. So I don't want to end this first one because I feel like there's just so much more. But I feel like the question is, how the fuck did you get through that to sit here with such light in this moment?
I wish I could give you a really succinct answer, but I don't really. I just did it.
You
I
just did.
think I never questioned that I could get my kids through the things.
Wow, you just knew.
I questioned my own self-esteem. I questioned who I was, but I never questioned that I had to get these kids to adulthood as, as good of humans as I could possibly
Wow.
help them to be. And that's That's the only way I can really say it is
Yeah.
I have doubted myself on so many things, but I never doubted myself as their mother.
Wow. What that is that yeah. I know.
I have felt like I screwed up a lot of
I
times,
know.
but that was my motivation to keep going is, no, these kids have to get out in this world and be good humans.
So it's funny because that's I think those words and the way you've thought about it are the reason that I too have done what I've done and I've never given up and I've flown forward in a way that my whole family is something to be admired, acknowledged, and I'm super grateful for.
Yeah.
Thank you for this diving deep. As I look at the clock, I don't know if you know this, but it's 1:11.
Really? I
It's a
stayed
really
the
good
clock,
time to
so
pause and come back
yes.
for part 2. Thank you for being open.
Thank you.
I don't even know where we're gonna go in part 2, but I'm extremely excited and gratitude for
Thank
this
you.
moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. Part 2 is up next. If this podcast resonates with you, it would mean the world to me if you would download my book, Listen to Your Fucking Heart. It's available as an ebook or hard copy on Amazon, and the link is also found in my social media bios. This book shares my perspective and story about hitting rock bottom over and over again and finding myself again. I wrote it with a purpose and a mission to help so many people who are looking for guidance as they try to empower themselves forward.